Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here at Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. All right. I'm recording this sort of Easter weekend. And here in Canada, early voting has already started. It 2021 or 2021, those dates in April, with the actual election on the 28th. So as of right now, the numbers for early voting are like something like 37% above what would be sort of considered normal or typical. So that's good because one way or the other, it means that people are engaged, right? They're paying attention to what's going on. In part because people are being impacted by the tariffs. They're being impacted by the nonsense that's coming out of our southern neighbors' administration. We know it's not the people. We get where it's coming from. And so what you have here in Canada, and I'm going to do my level best to sort of keep my bias out of this, but if you've been watching me for a while, you already know what my bias is. But I'm going to try to be as neutral as I can. And trust me, it's not going to be easy. But what we have in Canada here is this. We have a Trump wannabe, somebody that Elon Musk thinks is amazing, and who very much kind of preaches those conservative values in Justin Poilievre. Then we have, on the other side, a liberal who has no political experience. But what he brings to the table is this is the person who was head of the Bank of England during Brexit. This is the man who was the head of the Bank of Canada during COVID. He brings a great deal of wisdom and knowledge when it comes to economies, how to keep them growing, how to keep them moving forward. And if you saw any of the previous videos I did, I talked about one of the strategy things that he was able to do because he stepped into Trudeau's shoes, basically, and is prime minister until the results of this election happen. So one of the things that he was able to do was he negotiated trade agreements with other countries as to make up basically for what was being lost by the Trump tariff nonsense. But more importantly, what he did was he encouraged other countries to buy into the bond market, as Canada was doing, which then they've started this slow trickle of selling back bonds. And what that does is it destabilizes the United States economy. So that's how come 45 was just fine when the markets were going ballistic. But as soon as the bond market started to react, that was when he pulled back and backed off. So you have a man here with no political experience, but a lot of knowledge when it comes to economies and money matters and how to make the economy strong. And frankly, I think in some ways people are really tired of politicians, but they're also getting really tired of businessmen who aren't even actually all that successful, who think that they can run government like a business, and they can't. Okay, that's not how it works. And and people who think that that's how it should work should evaluate what kind of benefits and services they get from the government before they decide that everything the government does is bad. And as you know, this is one of my biggest pet peeves, right? You complain against what the government does, but you don't have any trouble taking the money that the government is giving you, whether that's in, lower taxes or certainly here in Canada, there have been literally just checks being sent out to rebalance things like, for example, um, a tax that was levied again to help improve the sort of response, if you will, to the government. I'm sorry, the word is escaping my brain. Um, but it was actually one of the first things that Carney did was he canceled it. So everybody now, like here in Alberta, when he canceled that tax, the price of gas dropped by like somewhere between 17 and 25 cents a liter. All right, let's take a look and see what's going on with these two and what it looks like for the results of the election. I'm going to quickly, I hope, um, break this into two readings, right? I want to look at Poilievre and then I'm going to look at Mark Carney. So let's start with um, uh, Justin Poilievre trajectory. Justin Poilievre trajectory, Justin Poilievre trajectory. I do not have to guard my bias that much. What he's dealing with right now is very harsh judgment against him and against conservative behaviors. This is a direct result of 45 because his politics were sort of aligned with 45's. And Canadians are looking at what's going on in the United States and saying, whoa, we're not going to let that horse leave the barn because the States is in serious, serious trouble right now. And we're not going to encourage that here. Now, listen, you have pockets of this country who still think that he's amazing and he's their guy, and good for them. Again, one of the benefits of living in a democracy is you have that option, right? But he is suffering from a significant and very fast moving backlash against the very belief structures that we are witnessing coming out of 45. But what's happening is it's causing people to reevaluate. So a lot of people out there who were gonna vote for him because they were sick and tired of Trudeau and they were sick and tired of the Liberals and they just had it. And I mean, the polls were indicating that. I mean, Poilievre and the Conservative government were supposed to slide into a win and a big win. And all of that space that they had between, like the number of points that they were ahead of the Liberals has not only vanished, but they've lost even more. So now the Liberals are ahead of them somewhere, depending on what you're looking at, between 5 and 8 points. That is not an insignificant number, and that is not an insignificant amount to try to make up in a week, okay? So there was a lot of reflection that happened with Canadians. Again, the tariff thing, and 45 with the, Canada be a great 51st state and all of that, it has really, really backfired on a party who was aligned with those sort of values. What happened was that their strength became their weakness. Their strength became what people did not want, those ideologies, those behaviors, those ideas to impact the country the way they are south of us. We're watching it. We can see it. We can see what's happening. And really, we love and appreciate all of you people for the support that you are giving us and showing us, and our hearts are breaking for you. Problem was, the emotion was too high, and he couldn't pivot fast enough. And that's a problem, right? Because if you spend all your time campaigning against the carbon tax, thank you, campaigning against how bad the carbon tax was and how horrible the Liberals were, and then, oh, the Liberals got rid of the carbon tax. Well, now you don't have anything to bitch about, right? And he couldn't pivot fast enough. And not only could he not pivot fast enough, but he was trying to pivot, but still adhere to what his base wanted to hear. Wow, does that sound familiar to anybody anywhere? So where they're now is there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of stress, um, because it doesn't look good. And not only, as of right now, the numbers indicate that not only are the Liberals going to win, but they're going to win with a majority. And the fact that there's so much strong early voting is an indicator, okay, that people are engaged on both sides. But it's an indicator that people are taking the threat seriously. He's too closely aligned to the guy in the Oval. He just is. And even people who agree with the ideas are not now comfortable with how they might be implemented. Here in Alberta, our Premier, Danielle Smith, is, I've said it before, I'll say it 100 times more, she is Trump in heels, okay? And he, even in conservative Alberta, is getting a lot of pushback against her continuing to buddy up to Trump. People don't like it. And she keeps trying to pivot and spin, but it's not working. And in fact, at one point she's actually being accused of election interference, because what she's done is she's reached out to Trump and said, you got to stop with the tariffs and the 51st state, because you are making it so much harder for the Conservative Party to win here in Canada, because people are pushing back against it. If you could just stop, that would be really helpful. And she said that she just didn't think that that was election interference. I would love to know what her definition is. Okay. This is the thing about conservatives, they want to go back to the way it was. And they have a very romanticized or glorified memory of how it was. And so, in large part, that's sort of what motivates them, right? I mean, I'm sorry, but we have people in Canada who are like people in the States. They are bigoted. They are biased. They don't want to hear about transgender people. They don't want to hear about all these rights. And so they're pushing back because they want to go back to a time where it was somehow in their memories, it was just easier or simpler. And you know what? For a lot of them, it was. But for a lot of people, it was sheer hell. When you think about how the indigenous people in this country were treated, and all of those unmarked graves that are being found now with all of those children, how are you supposed to be romanticizing that? It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. But people aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about, well, my life was much easier in 1967. It's a heavy lift. I have to tell you right now, I don't see how they're going to be able to overcome the deficit they have. Now, listen, they've got the 10 of Pentacles here, so they're going to get a lot of votes. All right. They're going to get support. And there's actually, I'm concerned about money seeping its way into campaigns. People in the States would be kind of familiar with that. I think it's going on. I think it's just a little bit more subtle. But ultimately, things don't look good for Poilievre. They don't. Again, he's too closely aligned to the Fool, who is otherwise known as the Greedy King. All right, that's him. Let's take a quick look at Mark Carney and see what we can find out about the Liberals. Now, there are people who are saying that Mark Carney is hiding assets. Of course, those are the same people who think it's perfectly fine that Poilievre has still not gotten a security clearance check. He won't agree to having a security clearance done, which makes one wonder exactly what he's hiding. And he's hiding behind a really flimsy excuse. So I don't know, maybe that's working for the people who follow him, but for the rest of us, we're kind of going, really? That's your story and you're sticking to it? So let's take a look and see what, and this is my feeling. You have somebody who understands money and the economy and how to make it work so well that he was the head of two huge banks in two countries. If he's wealthy, well, I gotta say, you would kind of expect him to be. Otherwise, he's not following his own damn advice. I mean, like, makes sense of what's going on, right? I mean, if you've got somebody who has that much knowledge when it comes to money and how to make it work and how to make it grow, if he was poor, you would wonder about like his skills. And, I don't know. He says he's put everything into a blank pressed. I think that's what they're called. And honestly, there's no reason that I can see at this point to not believe him, because he certainly did not do a press conference with a bunch of file folders with empty paper in it, screaming about how everything's going into a blind trust, like somebody else we know. Let's take a look, shall we? Here we go. Mark Carney trajectory, Mark Carney trajectory, Mark Carney trajectory. Okay. We're starting off with the Four of Pentacles. This is a reflection, actually, of the sort of overriding Canadian attitude. It's this idea of needing to hang on to the assets we have because, man alive, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride. Not only did we survive COVID, and this is the thing, aside from the United States, Canada's economy rebounded so quickly because he was overseeing what was going on with the bank. So people want, and now, of course, with the threat of tariffs and the actual tariffs that are now imposed, people are looking for somebody who understands money so that we can hang on to whatever money it is we independently have, because things are getting expensive here too. And people, many people are actually still trying to recover from the impact of COVID, even though the Canadian government was very generous about handing out money to all kinds of people who were not able to go to work because their work was shuttered down, right? It was like, you can't go to work there. It's not an emergency service. The government was sending them money, saying, keep afloat. Let's help you stay afloat. So that's part of what's motivating people. People like the fact that he knows what he's doing when it comes to big money and finances. He's also enjoying, an emotional surge, right? Because, right or wrong, people are viewing him as sort of like a savior, right? He can come in and he can make sure that we are protected, that our economy is protected. And so far, the things that he has done indicate that he knows how to do that. And the bond market thing is an absolutely brilliant example of that. So he is sort of in a place where he is being well received, and the criticism, it's not sort of taking hold. And that, that's sort of an interesting thing. The NDP, the New Democratic Party, who is headed by Jasmeet Singh, is having a horrendous time. And now, in this current government, the one we have, or had until it was, suspended for the election, the Liberals did not have a majority, they had a minority, but it was the NDP who worked with the Liberals to make sure that the Conservatives didn't have enough votes to basically stop things that we didn't want stopped. But they're having a horrible time right now because he is too closely aligned to Trudeau, and there is a lot of really, really negative feelings about Trudeau, rightly or wrongly. And Carney is not really being smeared with that. Singh, unfortunately, is taking the hit for that. All right. There's a feeling, and even though Conservatives don't like it, most everybody else does, that the money, the taxes we pay, that it's going to be used in a way to not only keep the economy strong, but to help those who need help, whether it is seniors or the disabled or, people with young children. There is a feeling that he is able to support that and help supplement them so that they are able to handle, frankly, the economy as it is right now. Because as I said, we're also being impacted by the tariffs that are being levied. Maybe not to a really, really, really horrible degree, just in part because one of the things that Carney did was he got this whole, made in Canada by Canadian stuff moving, and it's taken off like wildfire. So companies that are Canadian are really, in fact, from what I understand, they're actually having trouble now keeping up with the demand because the demand became so big because so many Canadians are absolutely buying Canadian. There is a Queen of Wands. There's a thing about him that makes you feel like he is going to take the right action, and that he has a way of communicating that is sort of not offensive, if you will. One of the things that I said for a long time was that was a problem with Trudeau is when he was asked a question, he would answer it, and then he would, as soon as he was finished talking, he would go, I didn't do it very well, but it was almost like a smirk. I don't believe that that was his intention. I think that was sort of his idea of a smile. And clearly it was something he had been doing his whole life, because I'm sure people must have said, don't do that. It's not good. But it was just almost like an involuntary movement. And what it did was it made him come off a little bit like sort of a know-it-all, or that there was just sort of a sarcasm or a bit of an insult that he was sort of putting out there. Carney doesn't have any of that. He's very laid back. He's very careful with his words, but the words he says are significant and important, and people can relate and understand. He has the wish card. So ultimately, I suppose it will be the wish of the Canadian people. And if enough Canadian people wish it and do what needs to be done to manifest it, like vote, he should ultimately come out ahead. The Lover's card, where for Poilievre, he was aligned so closely with Trump that has created a detriment. For Carney, he is viewed as somebody who will be able to pull country through what is promising to be a difficult time for our economy. So there is a sense that what he did was he created a movement or an energy that makes Canadians feel like we're working together. We are united, and we really, really are. Political beliefs aside, this whole Buy Canada movement, it's across the board. It's just not a political party, because part of what the pushback is against 45 and those tariffs. And that's not about a political party, right? That is something that's impacting the country. So what he did was he just somehow managed to make it so that people feel we're sort of all in this together and we're all fighting for a good cause. I have to say, the speed with which things pivoted, it has been kind of difficult, right? They're doing it's almost like he trying to keep his footing, because the things that he has done is being really well received by a whole lot of people, and so he has the momentum behind him. And that's putting him in a place where he has both the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords. So he has both fire and air energy propelling him and pushing him forward. And even though the horse in the Knight of Wands is sort of rearing back and holding back, the one in the Knight with the Swords, that horse is charging forward. Based on what I'm seeing right now, I have to say it looks like Carney is going to come out ahead. That's the energy that I'm looking at right now. And again, the early voting is a really good sign, one way or the other, because it means, to some degree, Canadians have started to pay attention to what our governments are doing. Because again, we have been able to witness what happens when people don't. All right. I hope this is helpful. And honestly, I hope I'm right. All right. Um, take care. Be well. Questions in the comment section. I will see you on Friday for Pendulum Friday. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Bye for now.